Good late afternoon, COVIDians, on this Monday, the 27th of July. I say late afternoon because it's about 4:55. I want to come on with this one to say something maybe not directly related to COVID, but related to racism. Yeah, something I think we really do need to take seriously. Something I think we need to understand is why the Tory party are so popular, why they get so many votes at general elections. You see, we know that racism in Britain is institutionalised. It's in our language, it's in our culture, it's in our institutions. It's the fabric of society. How did it become so much the fabric of society? Goes back obviously to the days of empire. Goes back to when Britannia ruled the waves. Goes back to when all those slave traders traded all those slaves who were really just considered as commodities. A bit like your life, your working life is considered as a commodity of no real value. Just think about how easy those attitudes are to entrench over time. Going just a shade off tangent rather than talking just about the reasons behind racism in this country and also in other countries, of course. Yep. But think about it. When Ian Duncan Smith, the murderer of Downing Street, the Eichmann of the disabled, the sick, the weak, the poor, yeah, the Adolf Eichmann, Ian Duncan Smith, known also as Ian RTU Smith, returned to unit. Apparently, once Captain Smith was so bad on a training course, possibly for promotion, that he was sent back, returned to unit. But I want to just go back to that because remember, when talking in the House of Commons, he described ordinary working people as stock. Please remember that use of the word stock. Yeah. Now, okay, he'd say, well, it's an economic term and the unemployed or the employed or whatever are often called stock. They're available to us in the economy to use, but they're stock. They're capital. Yeah. Stock. He thought of people as goods, commodities, tradable items, not as human flesh and blood, not with spirits and souls and life and loved ones and ones whom they do love and ones whom they care for, with real lives, real history, blood running in their veins. He thought of human beings as stock, a tradable commodity, like you'd trade sugar. For that matter, like you'd trade slaves. People with a different skin colour, a different skin tone, whom you pack into ships and transport across the seas. And when some of them died on the way, well, you'd either just push them overboard if they weren't fully dead, or you'd just bring the bodies back in and just use them to ballast the ship when it was necessary due to sea conditions. Yeah. Racism runs deep in British society. It runs so deep because of our imperialist past. Racism runs deep in British society because of our imperialism, because of British colonialism. And I want you just to think of one other thing. I came back to this country in the beginning of the 1970s, around 72, 73. Yeah, I was around 12, 13 or so. Yep. Now, at that time, many of the Ugandan Asian people were coming over. Idi Amin, the great dictator, had kicked them out of his country, had stolen their businesses, had murdered families, had murdered generations. This insane dictator. Now, many of them still retained British citizenship, so they came over here. So, of course, beforehand had the Windrush generation that you, I'm sure, know about. Can I tell you for 1 second that racism within the British working class was not absent? I was watching a documentary by a guy who does the history of the Tube and London Transport and London Underground. I can't remember his name, but it's a very good channel. And he was talking about that same time. And he was talking about how they really couldn't find people who wanted to do sort of low-paid jobs like driving buses or being conductors on the buses or cleaners or working for the bus service or the bus company. So they sent off and they asked for people from, quote, the colonies, I would probably say the Commonwealth of Nations, particularly Jamaica. And when they came over here, and Jamaicans will tell you this, ask back, yeah, the trade unions even backed their workers who refused to work with them. Take note of this if you're a trade unionist, yeah? Around about the time I came back here from Malta, racism was all the rage. I was called Packy, Nignog, Darky, yeah? I was told my father was a bus conductor. He was, in fact, an officer in the British Army, yeah? And the unions too, please take note of this. The unions went out and they got workers out when they were saying things like, well, I'm not working with a darkie. I ain't having a darkie conductor on this bus. No, whites only, mate. Closed shop. Whites only shop. Remember that. But remember also, racism was tackled within the trade union movement. Was tackled. And any decent trade unionist or socialist cannot be a racist. It's impossible. The aims don't go together. Now let me come a little bit to the conclusion of what I want to talk about. Yeah, the Red Tory Wall. Those people that voted Tory. Many of which, especially as you go further north, would have been in working class communities, would have been in communities hit by Tory cuts, Tory austerity, Tory sell-offs, Tory not supporting the National Health Service, Tory cuts to local services, cuts to local government, cuts to services supporting people who cannot support themselves, the sick, the elderly, the disabled. Those people in those poorer northern cities and towns, we know, voted Tory. What was it about the Tories that they loved? And what was it about the Tories that they would probably still vote for now? Racism. Why do you think Bozza never quite apologises for racist comments? Why do you think, even when the ones that he's used and mentioned, and the Islamophobic statements and the homophobic statements he's made and whatever, even when they're brought to his attention, Why do you think he never apologises for them? Why do you think investigations into homophobia in the Tory party never proceeded? Think my MP, Brandon Lewis, Great Yarmouth, party chairman at the time. Never proceeded. They know damn well, and with Brexit in their hands as well, and the faux patriotism in their hands as well, and the Union Jack in their hands, waving it all the way, and their send them back, and their old posters that used to say, if you want a coloured for a neighbour, vote Labour. Yeah? Why do you think those people voted Tory? Yeah? Racist as they are. They want the same things that they want. They want the same society that the Tories want. Now, some of them, obviously, just victims of brainwashing, constant brainwashing. People who don't read any more than the right-wing headlines in the media that is owned by the Tories, controlled by the Tories, says what the Tories want it to say, yeah? Demonises whom they choose to demonise and praises whom they choose to praise. Yeah, sure. And the election, of course, was about Brexit. Now, I'm not going to say that every single person who voted for Brexit was a racist. Of course not, yeah? But the racist vote, that's what gets them in. That's how serious racism is. I've experienced it myself. I don't want to see my niece, who's part Jamaican, experience it. I don't want to see my friends, my family, my colleagues experience it. One final story. It's going to take less than 2 minutes. We once, when I was working for a major insurance company, had a guy come in to talk to us about a cleaning company that we were going to use to clean up after floods. And because the city I was living in had a fairly high immigrant population, one of the things he said was, well, when we have to go and clean up after all those Asian families have apparently, quotation marks, had a flood, we find about 20 of them sleeping in one room and all sharing the same bed and the same surname, and always trying to pull a fast one, always saying the telly fell down the stairs while we were decorating, yeah, claiming for a, nana, auntie, grandma, yeah. That shows you, even in that guy's company, racism. I actually reported the guy for that, and he was made to apologise, yeah, and his company were written to by the insurance company that I was working for. Racism is endemic, and it's behind people voting Tory. Black Lives Matter.